Hello. Today we are going to look at, if we have numerical data, how can we understand more about the data that we've got? If we take in a bunch of measurements from the world, how can we analyze them? How can we understand the data that we've gotten in from our experiments better? And the ways that we're going to look at it are looking at what the center of the data would be, what the middle of the data would be, and the other way is looking at how spread out our data is. And we're going to look at 4 different things: mean, mode, median. They're all ways of understanding the middle of a group of data, and range is how spread out the data is. So we're going to look at some definitions and then a little rhyme that can help us to remember them. So mean is another word for average. So the average that you have already learned about in primary school is exactly what mean means. So it's add up all of the numbers. So if we have all of these numbers, we'd add up all of these numbers and then divide by the number of numbers. So we'd add up 8, 9, 2, 4, and 2, add them all up and divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'd divide the sum of these by 5. So that's our average is our mean, and that's always going to be true. The next one is mode. Mode is the name for the most frequently seen number in a list. So if I look at this list here, I have 8, 9, 2, 4, and 2. Well, 8, 9, and 4 only show up once in my list, but 2 shows up twice. So it's the most frequently seen number. It comes up twice, the rest of them only come up once. So 2 would be the mode here. Median requires us to do a little bit of rearranging first. So it's the middle number in our list, but only when the numbers are listed from lowest to highest. So we would have to rearrange a list like this, that's kind of in a random order, into smallest up to biggest. So 2 and then 2. So we have our 2 2s, then 4, then 8, and then 9. So this rearranging of data from smallest to biggest is extremely important and something we're going to do all of the time when we have data sets. And the median then would be the middle number in that list, which happily this time is fairly easy to see. 4 has 2 numbers on one side of it and 2 numbers on the other. So 4 would be the median number. So the middle number when we've listed from smallest to biggest. And the range would be the highest number minus the lowest number, and it's sometimes called the spread of the data, or how spread out the data is. So the highest number minus the lowest number. But when we have our ordered list, that's very easy to see. Our highest number is 9, our lowest number is 2, so our range would be 9 minus 2 is 7. And we're going to write all of them out in just a minute. So before we go on to it, there is a little rhyme we can use for learning this off. Which is mean is average, mean is average, mode most seen, mode most seen. Times 2 means we're saying it twice. Median is middle, median is middle, range high low, range high low. Now, the tune for this, if you want to learn it off as a little song to help it stick in your memory, is Frère Jacques, which you might know as Brother Jack, about the friar who is ringing the church bell. You might have learned it as a child. So that tune will work well with this song, I suppose, and help you remember these, because these are definitions you have to know, and they all sound a little bit similar, or mean, mode, and median can sound a bit similar, and you have to know them by heart. They're not given to you in an exam or anything like that. You have to know those things by heart, and that rhyme can help you with keeping track of it. Now, let's go into some examples and see how we get on. So we want to find the mean of our data set here. So the very first thing we're going to do is rewrite our data set in order. That helps us to not make any mistakes, and it's something we're pretty much always going to do, writing our data set in order from lowest to highest. So that's our first step, and it's pretty much always our first step. Now our mean, we know, is add up all of the numbers and then divide by the number of numbers. So that's just going to be 2 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8 plus 9 all over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 numbers. So our mean is add up the numbers and divide by the number of numbers. And when I put this into my calculator or work it out, I get 25 all over 5. When I do that division, I have a common factor of 5, so I just end up with 5. So that is my mean. Now the mean, you can see, is not one of the numbers in my list. It doesn't have to be, and it also doesn't have to be a whole number. It just worked out that way in this case. It could be a decimal or anything like that, or decimal or a fraction. It can work out that way lots of times. Now the mode, what is the most seen number? What is the most seen number going back to our song? Well, there are 2 2s here, so the mode is just 2. There can be more than one mode, but usually there'll only be one. Median. I've already done a lot of the work for the median here because I've been conscientious and I have written my numbers from smallest to biggest. So now I'm just looking for the middle number when I'm going from lowest to highest. So I can see that 4 is the middle number, and I don't have to do anything complicated here. It's just 4 because there's 2 numbers on one side of it and 2 numbers on the other when I'm listing from smallest to biggest. And the range is the highest number minus the lowest number. So 9 minus 2, 7 is the range. So we go 7 units up from the smallest to the biggest number, and that tells us roughly how spread out our data is. So let's have a look at our next set here. We have 951135. Our first job, as always, is going to be to reorganize this from smallest to biggest. So we have 2 1s, 1, 1. We can actually mark these off of our, particularly when the lists get even as long as this, it can be a very good idea to mark off when we have gotten our numbers done with. So we have 1 and 1, and there's no more 1s to deal with. Look for the next biggest number. I have 3. Then I have 2 5s. And then I have a 9 for my last one. So underlining as I go will help me to make sure that I don't miss any of these. These lists can get very long, so it's important that we have structures in place that help us not to miss any of our numbers. And at the end, we can count up that we have the same number of numbers in our first list as we do in our second list. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's unlikely I made a mistake because I underlined and I've double checked that I have the same number of numbers. So I now have this listed from smallest to biggest, and that's often, if not always, going to be my first step. So the mean is add everything up and divide by the number of numbers. So I have 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 5 plus 9 all over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And when I add them up, I get 24 all over 6, which is 4. Now, that is our mean taken care of. What's our mode? Well, this time I have 2 1s and I have 2 5s. So I have most frequent numbers. Both of these show up more than the rest of the numbers. So I might put down that 1 and 5 are both modal numbers. They're both, and that's actually another way that you can come across the word mode. It can be called the modal number. And I can have multiple of them. Usually they won't give you more than 2 of them, but if you have 2 numbers that are unusually more frequent than the rest, you could still say that there was a mode, but there'd be 2 of them. Now the median. So if we look at our list of numbers this time, we have 6 numbers, so what number is going to be in the middle? Well, we've kind of run into a problem. There isn't a number in the middle. Here I had 5 numbers, so it was nice. I had 1 number and then 2 numbers on either side. But there is no middle number. The middle of my data set here is in here between 3 and 5. So what I do if I have an even number in my data set is that I take my 3 and my 5, my 2 middle numbers, and I am going to get the average of them, or the mean of them. and I end up with 4 for my median. It's not a very neat 4, so I'll redo that 4. There's no significance particularly to the fact that the mean and the median ended up being the same number. It can happen. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So the median, if we have an even number of numbers, we mark where the middle of our data set is, and we are going to get the average of the two middle numbers, and that's going to give us the median if we have an even number in our data set. And then finally, the range is very easy to see when we have our numbers all nicely listed out. We go from highest 9 down to lowest 1. So 9 minus 1 is 8. And that is our range. And that's what we need for mean, mode, median, and range.